Evan Castellano stepped out of Newark Police Station at exactly 9:47 p.m. February cold hit his face like a slap. 12 degrees, wind chill somewhere below zero, the kind of night that killed homeless people in their sleep and made even hardened criminals stay indoors. But Evan wasn't a hardened criminal. Not officially. He was a businessman. A very successful businessman who occasionally needed to answer questions about certain misunderstandings in his import-export operations. Tonight's interview had lasted 2 hours and 17 minutes. Routine. Detective Morrison asking the same questions he'd asked 6 months ago. Evan giving the same answers. His lawyer billing $400 an hour to sit there and say, "My client declines to answer," exactly 3 times. The usual dance. Evan adjusted his charcoal Brioni vest, pulled his wool coat tighter. His Escalade was parked 30 feet away. Marcus waiting inside with the heat running. In 45 seconds, he'd be gone from this place. Back to his world. Back to business. Then he heard it. Footsteps. Small. Rapid. Desperate. The sound of bare feet slapping against frozen concrete. Evan turned. A child was running toward him. 8 years old. Maybe less. Pink pajamas with faded cartoon rabbits. No coat. No shoes. Brown hair tangled and wild. Plastered to a face streaked with tears and snot. And something that looked like terror given physical form. The girl's feet left red prints on the ground. Blood mixing with ice. She was running straight at him. "Please." The word came out in a cloud of white vapor, high-pitched and broken. "You're a policeman." Daddy locked Mommy in the freezer. "She's gonna die. Please, you have to help. Please, please." The girl collapsed against his legs, tiny frozen fingers clutching at his $1,000 coat, looking up at him with eyes that held more fear than any child should ever know. Evan stood perfectly still. His first instinct was to step back, walk away, get in the car. This wasn't his problem. This wasn't his world. He didn't save people. He was the person people needed saving from. "Please, Mr. Policeman." The girl's teeth chattered so violently she could barely form words. "Mommy's been in there since dinner time. It's so cold. She's gonna freeze. She's gonna die like the meat in there, and I don't want Mommy to be meat. Please." The girl thought he was a cop. Of course she did. She'd seen a man in an expensive suit walking out of a police station with the confident stride of someone who owned the world. In her 8-year-old mind, that meant detective. That meant help. That meant safety. She had no idea she'd just grabbed onto the most dangerous man in Newark. Evan looked down at her feet, blue-tinged toes, frostbite already forming, blood from cuts where she'd stepped on broken glass or frozen debris. This child had run through winter hell to find help. "Where do you live?" he asked. Not because he cared, because he needed her to let go so he could leave. 2147 Oak Ridge. "Please, you have to come now. Daddy said she's supposed to die by morning." He said it on the phone. He said it's gonna look like an accident, just like with Rebecca, and nobody will know. She opened her small fist. In her palm sat a silver bracelet, delicate, feminine, engraved with the words S and R, forever. "Mommy threw it through the crack," the girl whispered. "Before Daddy locked the big lock, so I would know, so I would tell someone." Blood stained the bracelet's clasp. Evan stared at it, stared at the girl, stared at those eyes, brown eyes, huge with terror, desperate with hope. Eyes that looked exactly like his sister Nina's had looked 28 years ago, when she was 8 years old, when their mother was dying on the kitchen floor, when men their father had trusted put 3 bullets in her chest because she'd threatened to go to the police. Nina had looked at him with those exact eyes and begged him to save their mother. He'd been 10 years old. He'd done nothing. He'd hidden in the closet and done nothing while his mother bled out 15 feet away. His mother had died because he'd been too scared to act. 3 seconds. That's how long Evan stood there. The most powerful crime boss in New Jersey, frozen by an 8-year-old girl's eyes. Then he made a decision that would change everything. Evan Castellano dropped to one knee, eye level with the child. His voice came out soft, softer than anyone in his organization had ever heard. "What's your name?" "Riley." The word shivered out of her. "Riley Morgan. Riley." He held her gaze. "Where exactly is your mother right now?" "The basement. The big freezer. The one Daddy uses for his restaurant stuff." Evan stood, pulled off his coat, wrapped it around the tiny frozen girl. It dragged on the ground, swallowing her completely, but it was warm. It was something. He lifted her in one motion. She weighed almost nothing, a bundle of ice and fear and desperate hope. "Marcus," he called toward the Escalade. "Change of plans." The Escalade's heater blasted at maximum. Marcus Rivera turned from the driver's seat the moment Evan climbed in carrying what looked like a bundle of expensive wool coat with a small frozen face peeking out. "Boss, what the thermal blanket?" "Now." Marcus didn't ask twice. 20 years of military service had taught him to act first and question later. He reached into the emergency kit under his seat, pulled out the silver thermal blanket, handed it back. Evan wrapped it around Riley, layering it over his coat. The girl was shaking so hard her teeth clicked together like castanets. Heat. Maximum. Keep driving slow. Circle the block. Marcus obeyed. The Escalade pulled away from the police station, warm air flooding the cabin. Evan looked at the child in his arms. Her lips were still purple. Her feet were a mess of blood and early frostbite. But her eyes were alert, focused, watching him with the intensity of someone who had staked everything on a single desperate gamble. Riley. He kept his voice low, calm. I need you to tell me exactly what happened. Everything. Can you do that? She nodded, swallowed, began. Daddy came home at 6. He was nice at first. He's always nice at first when he's planning something bad. Her voice trembled, but her words came out in logical sequence, remarkably coherent for an 8-year-old who had just run over 2 miles through a February night. He told Mommy he needed help with something in the basement. She didn't want to go. I could tell. But she went anyway because she's scared of him. She's always scared of him. Riley pulled the coat tighter around herself. I heard them go down the stairs. Then I heard Mommy scream. Then hitting sounds. Then Mommy crying and saying, please, please, Derek, don't do this. Then a big metal sound, like a door closing. Then a chain sound. Then nothing. What time was this? 6:15. I looked at my clock. Mommy taught me to always know what time things happen. She said it might be important someday. Evan felt something cold settle in his chest. This mother had been preparing her daughter, teaching her to be a witness, knowing this day might come. What did you do after? I pretended to sleep. Daddy came upstairs and watched TV like nothing happened. He made a phone call at 8. I snuck to the stairs and listened. What did he say? Riley closed her eyes, concentrating. When she spoke again, her voice dropped into a rough imitation of an adult male. He said, it's done. She's in the unit. Temperature's set. By morning, it'll look like she wandered in there herself. Accidental hypothermia. Just like with Rebecca. Nobody questioned that one. Nobody's gonna question this. Marcus glanced at Evan through the rearview mirror. His expression said everything. Then Daddy said something about insurance. Riley continued. $380,000 from the policy. Split 3 ways like we agreed. And someone named Dr. Cross is coming at 6 in the morning to do something. I don't know what. But Daddy laughed when he said it. The bad laugh. Evan's jaw tightened. 3 ways, not 2, 3. That meant at least 2 other people were involved in this. Not a crime of passion, a conspiracy. Dr. Cross. A doctor making house calls at 6 a.m. to a house where a woman was freezing to death in a basement. That wasn't a social visit. And Rebecca. Riley. Evan's voice was very quiet now. Who's Rebecca? Daddy's first wife. She died before he married Mommy. Car accident. Daddy got lots of money from it. He told Mommy that once when they were fighting, he said he knew how to make problems disappear. Evan looked at Marcus. Marcus was already on his phone, texting rapidly. 30 seconds later, a response came through. Marcus read it, and his face went hard. Rebecca Lawson, he said quietly. Derek's first wife. Died 4 years ago. Single vehicle accident. Car went off Miller Bridge into the river. Insurance payout, $220,000. Investigating officer closed the case in 72 hours. Ruled accidental. 4 years ago. And now Derek was doing it again. Same pattern. Same result. Different woman. Except this time, a little girl had run 2.1 miles through the frozen dark to find help. This time, that little girl had found Evan Castellano. Evan looked at Riley, at her ruined feet, at her desperate eyes, at the silver bracelet still clutched in her tiny fist. How long has your mother been in that freezer? Since 6:15. Evan checked his watch. 9:53 p.m. 3 hours and 38 minutes. Industrial freezers operated at -18 Celsius. At that temperature, a human body could survive 6 to 8 hours before hypothermia became fatal. Maybe less, depending on what she was wearing, depending on injuries sustained before being locked inside. That left somewhere between 2 and 4 hours. Maybe less. Marcus. Evan's voice carried the cold authority that had built an empire. Call everyone. Full team. I want them at the warehouse in 20 minutes. Silent approach. No police. No questions. Marcus nodded once. Started dialing. Riley looked up at Evan with those huge brown eyes. You're going to save Mommy? Evan didn't answer directly. He'd learned long ago never to make promises he might not keep. But as he looked at this frozen, brave, impossible child, He made one silently, whatever it took. The warehouse sat in the industrial district of Newark. No signs, no markings, just a gray building among gray buildings, invisible to anyone who didn't know what it held. 18 minutes after Marcus made the calls, 12 men stood inside. They arrived in separate vehicles, no headlights, no noise, shadows slipping through shadows. The kind of men who had learned to move without being seen, because being seen often meant being dead. Victor Tran came first, 45 years old, former trauma surgeon who had lost his license over a patient's death that wasn't his fault but looked like it was. Now he kept Evan's people alive when hospitals weren't an option. He carried 2 medical bags and wore the calm expression of someone who had seen everything. Tony Knuckles Bianchi arrived second, short, thick-fingered, with hands that could open any lock ever made. Safes, doors, handcuffs. If it had a mechanism, Tony could defeat it. Danny Cho came third, 28 years old, skinny, glasses, the kind of person you'd walk past on the street without a second glance. Also the kind of person who could hack into federal databases, loop security cameras, and erase digital footprints like they never existed. 9 others followed. Men with military backgrounds, men with prison records, men who had chosen Evan Castellano's organization because it offered something the straight world never had: purpose, protection, and a code that actually meant something. They gathered in the main room, concrete floor, metal walls, a single table in the center with building blueprints that Danny was already pulling up on his laptop. Evan stood at the head of the table. Riley sat in a corner chair, still wrapped in his coat and the thermal blanket, watching everything with those huge, exhausted eyes. "Listen carefully," Evan said. "We have limited time and 0 margin for error." He laid out the situation in 30 seconds. The address, the target, the woman locked in an industrial freezer in the basement, the husband who had done this before and gotten away with it. Timeline, he continued. Sarah Morgan has been in that freezer since 6:15. It's now 10:11 p.m. That's approximately 4 hours. Industrial units operate at -18 Celsius. Maximum survival window is 6 to 8 hours. We're looking at 2 to 4 hours remaining, maybe less. No one spoke. No one needed to. Every man in that room understood urgency. "Why not call the cops?" Tony asked. Not challenging, just asking. Because someone named Dr. Cross is arriving at that house at 6 a.m. to do something medical. Because the husband mentioned splitting money 3 ways. Because his first wife died in suspicious circumstances, and the case was closed in 72 hours. Evan's voice was flat. That means cops might be involved. Until we know who's dirty, we trust no one outside this room. Victor moved toward Riley. The girl tensed, but didn't pull away when he knelt beside her. "I need to look at your feet, sweetheart." Riley glanced at Evan. He nodded once. She let Victor unwrap her feet from the coat. The damage was worse in proper lighting. Blue-gray toes, blisters forming, blood dried in patterns that showed exactly how far she had run. "Stage 2 frostbite," Victor said quietly. "She needs proper treatment. Warm water immersion, monitoring for tissue damage. If we wait too long, no." Everyone turned to look at the 8-year-old girl. "Not until mommy's safe." Riley's voice was small but absolutely firm. "I didn't run all that way just to sit here while my feet get better. You can fix me later. Save mommy first." Silence filled the warehouse. 12 hardened criminals stared at a child who had more courage than most adults would ever possess. Victor looked at Evan. Evan looked at Riley. "We'll be fast," he said. "Victor, stabilize her feet enough to prevent permanent damage. Nothing more. We move in 20 minutes. Victor nodded, started working. Danny's fingers flew across his keyboard. Derek Lawson, 38 years old, works as a restaurant supplier, which explains the industrial freezer access. No criminal record, but I'm finding financial irregularities, large deposits that don't match his income. And his first wife, Rebecca, had a life insurance policy of $220,000, paid out in full. Current wife, Sarah Morgan, 32, policy with Hartford Life, $380,000. Marcus swore under his breath. "There's more." Danny pulled up another screen. "Dr. Raymond Cross, transplant surgeon at Street Elizabeth Medical Center, highly respected, runs a charity for organ donation awareness." He paused. "Also has 3 malpractice suits that got settled quietly. And his name appears in the same financial records as Derek Lawson. Regular payments, going back 6 years. 6 years. The same time frame as Rebecca's death. This was bigger than one murder, bigger than one insurance payout." "I need the house layout," Evan said. "Working on it. County records show I have it." Everyone turned. Riley had pulled a folded piece of paper from her pajama pocket. crumpled, stained with something that might have been tears or might have been snow. She held it out to Evan. He unfolded it carefully. A map, drawn in pencil, surprisingly detailed for a child's work. The house's footprint, the basement stairs, the location of the freezer, the back door, the bedroom windows. Small X marks labeled cameras in 3 locations. I drew it while I was pretending to sleep, Riley said quietly. Mommy always said if something bad happens, you need to be smart, not scared. You need to give people information so they can help. Evan stared at the map, at the careful lines, at the strategic thinking of a child who should have been worrying about homework and cartoons instead of escape routes and surveillance systems. He looked up at his men, at 12 killers and thieves and criminals who were looking at this 8-year-old girl with something approaching reverence. We move in 15 minutes, Evan said. Study this map. Memorize it. We're bringing her mother home alive. 3 vehicles. No headlights. No sound except engines humming low in the frozen night. 11:42 p.m. The convoy moved through Newark's residential streets like ghosts. Black Escalade leading, 2 dark SUVs following. No license plates visible. Nothing to remember if anyone happened to look out their window. They parked 2 blocks from Oak Ridge Drive, cut engines simultaneously. Evan checked his watch. Sarah Morgan had been in that freezer for 5 hours and 27 minutes. Status on the house, he said into his earpiece. Danny's voice came through crisp and clear from the warehouse, where he'd stayed with Riley and Victor. Cameras are looped. I'm feeding 30 minutes of empty footage on repeat. You're invisible. The husband? His phone pinged near a bar called Lucky's on 3rd Street. 15 minutes ago. He's not home. Perfect. Evan looked at Marcus. Let's move. 12 men flowed out of vehicles and into darkness. They moved in, practiced formation. Silent, efficient. The kind of coordination that came from years of working together on operations that the police never heard about. The house at 1847 Oak Ridge Drive sat dark and quiet. Middle-class neighborhood. Trimmed lawns buried under snow. Christmas lights still hanging on some houses, though the holidays had passed weeks ago. Nothing about this house screamed monster lives here. But monsters rarely advertised. Tony reached the back door first, knelt, examined the lock with a penlight held between his teeth. Standard deadbolt, he murmured. Alarm system is. He paused, studying the door frame. Disabled. He turned it off before he left. Didn't want any accidental triggers while she's dying in there. 47 seconds. That's how long it took Tony to open the door. No sound, no forced entry. Just a soft click and the door swung inward. Cold air rushed out. Not freezer cold. House cold. Derek Lawson hadn't bothered with heating. Why waste money warming a tomb? Evan entered first. Marcus behind him. 2 men stayed at the door. 2 more circled to the front. The rest spread out around the perimeter, watching for Derek's return. Inside, the house was ordinary. Living room with a leather couch. Television mounted on the wall. Kitchen with dishes in the sink. Photos on the mantel showing a smiling couple. Sarah Morgan looked happy in those pictures. Trusting. Unaware of what she had married. The basement door was in the hallway. Wooden. Old. A padlock hung from an exterior latch. A padlock on a basement door. From the outside, no one locked basements from outside unless they were keeping something in. Or someone. Tony handled this lock too. 12 seconds. The door creaked open. Wooden stairs descended into blackness. The smell hit immediately. Damp, cold, something metallic underneath, the scent of old concrete and machine oil and fear. Evan went down first. Each step groaned under his weight. He moved slowly, testing the boards, letting his eyes adjust to the darkness. A single bulb hung from the ceiling at the bottom, casting weak yellow light across a cluttered basement. Boxes, old furniture, Christmas decorations that would never see another holiday. And in the corner, humming with mechanical efficiency, stood an industrial freezer, restaurant grade, stainless steel, big enough to hold a side of beef, big enough to hold a woman, a heavy chain wrapped around the handles, combination padlock securing it, professional, deliberate, the setup of someone who had planned this carefully. Evan approached, put his hand on the freezer's surface, ice cold. He pressed his ear against the door. Silence. No banging, no screaming, no sounds of life at all. His stomach dropped. Bolt cutters, he said quietly. Marcus handed them over. Evan positioned the blades around the chain, squeezed, his arms strained. The cold made the metal brittle but also made his hands stiff. He adjusted, squeezed harder. The chain snapped with a crack that echoed through the basement. Evan unwrapped it from the handles, threw it aside, grabbed the freezer door, pulled. Frozen air poured out in a white cloud. Visibility dropped to nothing for 2 seconds. 3. Then the mist cleared. Sarah Morgan lay curled on her side. Fetal position. Arms wrapped around herself. She wore a gray sweater and jeans. No coat. No blanket. Nothing between her body and -18 degrees of killing cold. Her skin was gray. Lips purple-black. Frost crystals clung to her eyelashes and hair. She looked like a sculpture, like something carved from ice and left to be forgotten. She wasn't moving, wasn't shivering, wasn't breathing, at least, not visibly. Marcus pushed past Evan, dropped to his knees, pressed 2 fingers against Sarah's neck. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, 4 seconds. The silence was absolute. The freezer's compressor had shut off when the door opened. No mechanical hum, no external noise, just Marcus kneeling beside a woman who looked dead, and Evan standing over them both, watching, waiting, feeling something he hadn't felt in 20 years. Fear. 5 seconds. Marcus looked up. Pulse, he said. Weak, thready, maybe 40 beats per minute, but present. She's alive. Evan exhaled. Victor, he said into his earpiece. We found her. Critical condition. Hypothermia stage 2, maybe 3. We're bringing her out. Be ready. Then he bent down and helped Marcus lift Sarah Morgan from the frozen coffin her husband had built for her. Victor arrived in 4 minutes. He came through the basement door with his medical bags already open, moving with the efficient calm of someone who had treated gunshot wounds in back alleys and knife injuries in warehouse offices. Hypothermia was almost gentle by comparison. Core temperature 91.4, he announced after pressing a thermometer probe under Sarah's arm. Stage 2, hypothermia. Not critical yet, but close. They had laid Sarah on a tarp on the basement floor. Her body was rigid, locked in the fetal position she had held for over 5 hours. Her skin felt like refrigerated meat. We need to warm her slowly, Victor continued, pulling equipment from his bags. Too fast and we trigger cardiac arrest. The heart can't handle sudden temperature changes when it's this cold. Thermal blankets came out first, then heated IV bags that Victor had kept warming in an insulated container, then oxygen through a portable mask. No active rewarming until we get her somewhere stable. Right now, we just prevent further heat loss and let her body do the work. Sarah's eyes fluttered. Her lips moved. No sound at first, then a whisper so faint it barely existed. Riley. Riley. Evan knelt beside her. Close enough for her to see his face. Close enough for her to hear him clearly. Your daughter is safe, he said. She's being taken care of. You're safe now too. Sarah's eyes focused on him for just a moment. Confusion and fear and desperate hope all mixed together in that gray, frozen face. Then her eyes closed again. She's stable for transport, Victor said. But we need to move soon. Where are we taking her? The clinic, Evan said. Prepare the back room. While Victor worked on Sarah, Marcus went back to the freezer. Something had been nagging at him. The way Derek had set this up. The professionalism of it. The chain and combination lock. The disabled alarm system. This wasn't amateur work. This was someone who had done it before. People who did things before usually kept records. He shined his flashlight into the freezer's interior. Frost coated every surface. Ice crystals glittered like diamonds. But there, in the back corner, something didn't belong. A waterproof document bag, the kind used by hikers and sailors, duct taped to the freezer wall, positioned where a dying woman might never think to look. Marcus pulled it free, opened it. Inside, insurance documents. Sarah Morgan's life insurance policy with Hartford Life. $380,000. Derek Lawson listed as primary beneficiary. But there was more. A cell phone. Old model. Cracked screen. Marcus recognized it as the kind of phone someone confiscates from a spouse they want to control. And beneath that, a USB drive. Small, black, taped to the inside of the bag with care that suggested importance. Boss. Marcus held up his findings. She hid these in here. Before he locked her in, she knew she might not make it out, so she left evidence. Evan took the USB drive, turned it over in his fingers. Smart woman, he murmured. Danny, can you access this remotely? Not remotely, but bring it back and I'll have it cracked in 5 minutes. Tony's voice came from the other side of the basement. Got something else over here? He was standing beside a metal shelving unit filled with old paint cans and holiday decorations. But he'd moved the unit aside, revealing a wall safe hidden behind it. Combination lock, Tony said. Give me 2 minutes. 90 seconds later, the safe swung open. Tony whistled low. Cash. Stacks of it. Evan estimated $47,000, maybe more. 3 passports. All with Derek Lawson's photo, all with different names, and photographs, 7 of them, each showing a different woman. Each photograph had a date written on the back and a number. The dates spanned 6 years. The numbers ranged from 180,000 to 420,000. The most recent photograph showed Sarah Morgan. Jesus, Marcus breathed. But it was the last item that made Evan's blood go cold. A manila folder, medical documents inside. The header on each page read the same thing: donor match protocol. Inside were charts, blood types, tissue compatibility assessments, organ condition evaluations. 7 files, 7 women, each one cataloged like livestock. Evan stared at the documents in his hands. This isn't just insurance fraud, he said quietly. This is a harvesting operation. They're not just killing these women for money. They're selling their organs. The basement went silent. Every man present understood what that meant. The scale of it, the organization required, the number of people who had to be involved for something like this to work. Doctors, buyers, transporters, recruiters. Derek Lawson wasn't a lone killer. He was a cog in a machine. Evan's earpiece crackled. Boss, one of the perimeter team, voice tight with warning. We've got movement. Black pickup truck just turned onto Oak Ridge, 3 blocks out. Derek? Plates match his registration. Evan checked his watch. 11:59 p.m. 3 minutes until the husband came home to find his wife missing and his secrets exposed. Victor, get her out. Now. Use the back route. Everyone else, positions. We're not leaving until I have a conversation with Mr. Lawson. Evan moved fast. Victor, take Sarah out through the backyard. The SUV on Maple Street. Go now. Victor didn't hesitate. With help from Tony, they lifted Sarah onto a portable stretcher and disappeared up the basement stairs. 30 seconds later, Evan heard the back door close softly. Marcus, you're with me. Knuckles, Bruno, stay close. Everyone else, pull back to the vehicles. Protect the evidence. If this goes wrong, that USB drive needs to reach the right people. The team scattered like smoke. Evan climbed the basement stairs, Marcus behind him, 2 others positioning themselves in shadows throughout the house. Then they waited. 12:08 a.m. Headlights swept across the living room windows. Engine sound. Then silence as the truck parked in the driveway. A car door slammed, footsteps on frozen ground. The jingle of keys. The front door opened. Derek Lawson stepped inside, reaching for the light switch, mind probably still at the bar where he'd been celebrating his wife's upcoming death. The lights came on. Derek froze. His living room was wrong. Things moved. The basement door open. And there, sitting in his leather armchair like he owned it, was a stranger in an expensive charcoal coat. Derek's hand went to his waistband, the gun he kept there for protection. I wouldn't, said a voice behind him. Marcus pressed cold steel against the back of Derek's skull. Derek's hand stopped moving. Take it out slowly, Marcus instructed. 2 fingers. Set it on the floor. Derek obeyed. His face cycled through emotions. Shock, fear, confusion. Then something harder. The calculating look of a man trying to figure out an angle. Who are you people? His voice came out steadier than his. Shaking hand suggested, This is my house. This is breaking and entering. I'll have you all arrested. Evan didn't move from the chair, didn't raise his voice, just spoke with the calm certainty of someone who held all the cards. Derek Lawson, restaurant supplier, widower of Rebecca Lawson, currently married to Sarah Morgan. Derek's face twitched at Sarah's name. Your wife has been in the freezer downstairs for approximately 6 hours, Evan continued. Industrial unit. -18 degrees. You locked her in there, expecting her to die of hypothermia by morning. Then you'd report her missing. Collect the $380,000 insurance policy, just like you did with Rebecca 4 years ago. You're insane. Derek's voice pitched higher. Sarah left me. We had a fight and she walked out. I've been looking for her all night. She was still in the freezer 20 minutes ago when we cut the chains and pulled her out. The color drained from Derek's face. You found, alive. Evan let the word hang, barely, but alive. Derek's mouth opened, closed, opened again. Marcus reached into his jacket and pulled out the photographs from the safe. Spread them on the coffee table like a poker hand. 7 women, 7 faces, 7 lives reduced to dates and dollar amounts. These were in your safe, Marcus said, along with $47,000 in cash, 3 fake passports, and something called a donor match protocol. Derek stared at the photographs. His face went through a transformation. The calculating look crumbled. The confidence evaporated. What remained was something rawer, cornered. "I want a lawyer." "We're not police," Evan said simply. "Lawyers don't apply." That's when Derek understood. His eyes darted around the room, taking in the hard faces, the professional movements, the complete absence of badges or procedures. "Oh God." His voice dropped to a whisper. "You're them. You're the people they warned me about. The ones who sit down." Derek sat, heavily, like his strings had been cut. Evan leaned forward. "You're going to tell me everything. Names, locations, how the operation works, everyone involved." "I can't." Derek shook his head rapidly. "You don't understand. These people, they'll kill me. They'll find me wherever I go, and You're worried about what they'll do?" Evan's voice dropped to something close to a whisper. "You should be worried about what I'll do. Right now. In the next 5 minutes. Unless you start talking." Derek's eyes met Evan's. Whatever he saw there broke him. "I'm just a recruiter," he said, words tumbling out fast. "I find the women, target them, build relationships, marry them, handle the termination. But I don't run anything. I'm just one of 4 collectors. Collectors. That's what they call us. We collect the assets, the women, find ones who are healthy, no family ties, no one who'll ask questions. We marry them, set up the insurance, wait a couple years to avoid suspicion. Then you kill them." Derek flinched at the word. "The doctor handles the harvest. I do the rest." "The doctor, Raymond Cross." Derek's head snapped up. Fear multiplied in his eyes. "How do you know that name? Who else?" "I don't know everyone. I swear. There's someone at the top. Someone with connections. Political connections." Cross reports to him. "But I've never met him. Never even heard his name. They keep it compartmentalized. Safer that way. Someone with political connections." Evan repeated it flatly. "Someone untouchable." That's what Cross said. Said no one could bring them down because the protection went all the way to the top. "Capitol Hill," he said. "Someone in government." Evan was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood. "You're going to tell this story again," he said. "Every detail. Names, dates, methods, everything you know. And when we're done, you're going to help us bring down everyone involved. And then you'll let me go?" A pathetic hope entered Derek's voice. Evan looked at him. At this man who had murdered women for profit, who had locked his wife in a freezer to die, who had destroyed families and sold human beings piece by piece. "You'll talk," Evan said coldly. "But not for freedom, for the chance to live long enough to see a prison cell." The warehouse interrogation room had no windows, concrete walls, single chair bolted to the floor. One overhead light that cast harsh shadows across Derek Lawson's face as he sat handcuffed, sweating despite the cold. Evan stood against the far wall, arms crossed, silent. He hadn't touched Derek, hadn't threatened him, hadn't raised his voice once in the 45 minutes since they'd brought him here. He didn't need to. The presence of 12 men who clearly operated outside the law, the knowledge that his wife had survived, the photographs spread on the table in front of him. All of it combined to create a pressure that no physical threat could match. Derek talked. "It started 6 years ago," he said, voice hollow. "Cross approached me. Said he had a business opportunity. High risk, high reward. All I had to do was find the right women. Define right, healthy, isolated, no close family, no one who would ask questions when they disappeared." Derek swallowed hard. Young enough that their organs would be valuable, old enough that they had some money, some assets, could qualify for good insurance policies. Marcus stood by the door, recording everything on his phone. Danny sat at a laptop in the corner, simultaneously searching databases and monitoring the USB drive that was still decrypting. "How many?" Evan asked. 11, total. Across all 4 collectors. Collectors. That's what you call yourselves. That's what Cross calls us. There's me in Jersey, a guy named Patterson in Pennsylvania, someone called Walker in Delaware, and one more I never met, working the Maryland area. Evan's jaw tightened. 4 states, 11 women, 6 years of operation. Walk me through the process. Derek's hands trembled. "We identify targets, usually through dating sites, church groups, community events, places where lonely women go looking for connection. We approach, we charm, we marry, then we wait. Wait for what? 2 years minimum. Insurance companies get suspicious if claims come too soon after marriage. So we wait, build the relationship, increase the policy value gradually, make everything look normal. Then Cross gives us a date, a method. Usually something that looks like an accident. Car crash, drowning, fall, something that doesn't require an autopsy. Derek paused. Or if it does, Cross has people who handle that too. And the organs? Derek's face twisted. Something between guilt and greed. That's the real money. Insurance pays out $200,000-300,000. But organs? A healthy woman has 2 kidneys, a liver, a heart, corneas, skin, bone marrow, parted out to the right buyers. One body is worth $900,000 to $1.2 million. The room went cold. Evan had seen evil in his life, had done things himself that others would call monstrous. But this was something different. This was industrialized murder, assembly line death, human beings reduced to inventory. Who performs the surgeries? Cross. He runs a legitimate practice at Street Elizabeth Medical Center. Transplants, mostly, but he has a private facility somewhere. I don't know where. He handles all the medical work there. And your sister? Derek flinched. Brenda? She's a nurse. She helps you select targets through medical records. Don't insult me by denying it. She handles the screening, pulls records from the hospital system, blood types, health histories, makes sure the women we target are good matches for buyers who are already waiting. Danny looked up from his laptop. Boss, the USB is decrypted. Everyone turned. Danny's face was pale as he scrolled through the files. There's video here, multiple files, and text conversations, and... He turned the laptop so Evan could see. The screen showed a list. Names, 4 of them. Next to each name was a photograph, an address, and a status marked pending. 4 more women, already selected, already marked for death. These are the next targets, Danny said quietly. They've already started the approach on 2 of them. Evan moved to the laptop. Read the names. Looked at the faces. 4 women who had no idea they were being hunted. Who thought they'd found love. Who would die in staged accidents and have their bodies harvested for parts. There's more. Danny clicked to another file. Video. Looks like it was recorded on a phone. Hidden camera angle. He hit play. Derek's voice filled the room, tinny through laptop speakers, but clear. Rebecca was easy. Trusting. Never suspected a thing until the car went off the bridge, and by then it was too late. The video showed Derek talking to someone off-screen, bragging, laughing about murder. Sarah recorded this, Danny said. 8 months ago, based on the file date, she must have suspected something and started gathering evidence. Evan stared at the screen. At this woman who had known she was married to a killer, who had gathered proof, who had hidden it in the only place she might have a chance to be found. She had prepared for her own death, and in doing so, had given them everything they needed. We can't take this to local police, Marcus said. If there's someone in government protecting this operation, there is. Evan's voice was flat. Cross told Derek the protection goes to Capitol Hill. Someone with enough power to make investigations disappear. Until we know who that is, every law enforcement contact is a potential leak. He looked at the 4 faces on the screen. 4 women who had maybe months to live unless someone stopped this. This isn't about saving one person anymore, Evan said. This is about bringing down an entire network, and we're going to need a lot more than a USB drive to do it. The clinic occupied the back half of a laundromat in East Newark. From the street, nothing looked unusual. Washing machines humming, fluorescent lights buzzing, a bored attendant reading a magazine behind the counter. But behind the employees-only door, through a narrow hallway, past 2 locked checkpoints, was a fully equipped medical facility. 3 beds, surgical equipment, monitoring systems, everything a former trauma surgeon might need to treat patients who couldn't go to hospitals. Sarah Morgan lay in the first bed. Victor had worked on her for 2 hours. IV fluids warmed to body temperature, pumped slowly into her veins. Heated blankets wrapped around her torso and legs. Oxygen flowing through a nasal cannula. Her core temperature had risen to 96.8 degrees. Still below normal, but out of the danger zone. She's stable, Victor reported to Evan. 2 cracked ribs, bruising on her wrists consistent with being restrained. Contusions on her face and neck. He beat her before he put her in there. Will she recover? Physically, yes. A few weeks of rest, proper nutrition, she'll heal. Victor paused. Mentally? That's another question. What she went through, that leaves marks you can't see on x-rays. Evan nodded once. There's someone who wants to see her, Victor added. She's been asking every 5 minutes. Riley, the girl had been waiting in the outer room since they'd brought Sarah here. Victor had treated her frostbitten feet, wrapped them in medicated bandages, given her warm clothes to replace the blood-stained pajamas. But she'd refused to rest, refused to close her eyes, just sat in a plastic chair, staring at the door to her mother's room. Evan walked out, found Riley exactly where he expected. She looked up at him with those huge brown eyes. So much hope, so much fear. Is Mommy okay? She's going to be fine. Evan crouched down to her level. Do you want to see her? Riley was off the chair before he finished the sentence. He led her to the doorway, opened it. Sarah was awake, propped up slightly on pillows, pale and bruised but alive, so very alive. Riley. Her voice came out cracked, broken, but she held out her arms. Riley ran. She crashed into her mother's embrace like a small, desperate missile. No sound came out, no crying, just absolute silence as she buried her face in Sarah's chest and held on with everything she had. Sarah wrapped her arms around her daughter, hands shaking, tears streaming down her battered face. You found help. Sarah's voice broke on every word. You ran all that way. In the cold. You saved me. My brave girl. You saved Mommy. They stayed like that, mother and daughter, holding each other like the world might try to tear them apart again. Evan watched from the doorway. Something twisted in his chest. Something he hadn't felt in decades. The memory of another mother, another embrace that never happened. Arms that stayed cold on a kitchen floor while he hid in a closet and did nothing. He turned away. 15 minutes later, when Riley had fallen asleep curled against her mother's side, Sarah looked at Evan with clear eyes. You're not police. No. Then who are you? Why did you help us? Evan considered the question. Considered how to answer. Your daughter found me, he said finally. She asked for help. I said yes. Sarah studied his face. The expensive clothes, the cold eyes, the way his men moved around him with military precision. You're dangerous. Yes, but you saved us. I'm not finished yet. Evan pulled a chair closer to the bed. I need to know everything. Derek, Dr. Cross, the operation. Tell me what you know. Sarah's face hardened. The victim retreated. Something stronger emerged. 6 months ago, I found emails on Derek's laptop. He thought I was asleep. Messages to someone called Cross about delivery schedules and client payments. I didn't understand at first. Then I found the photographs. The women, hidden in his office safe. 7 faces, 7 dates. I recognized one of them. Rebecca, his first wife. Sarah's voice dropped. That's when I knew what he was. Why didn't you run? With what? He controlled everything. The bank accounts, the car, my phone. He took my phone 8 months ago, said I didn't need it. I had no family to call, no friends he hadn't screened. She laughed bitterly. He chose me because I was alone, because no one would miss me. But you gathered evidence, everything I could. Recordings, photographs. I hid the USB drive in the one place I knew I might end up. Her jaw tightened. I knew there was a chance I wouldn't survive. I wanted someone to find the truth. What happened today? He found me looking at his laptop. I tried to pretend, but he knew. He always knew. She touched her bruised face. He beat me until I stopped fighting. Then he dragged me to the basement. And Dr. Cross? Derek called him before he locked me in. Said the timetable was moving up. Cross was supposed to arrive at 6 a.m. with a team. A fake ambulance. They were going to. She couldn't finish. Didn't need to. Your organs were already sold. Sarah nodded. Eyes hollow. 3 buyers waiting. I heard Derek say it. Someone needed a kidney. Someone needed a liver. My heart was going to a man in Delaware. Evan checked his watch. 1:07 a.m. Cross was expecting to arrive at Derek's house in less than 5 hours, expecting to find a dead woman ready for harvest. Instead, he would find an empty freezer and a missing husband. The moment that happened, the entire network would know they were compromised. Evidence would disappear. Witnesses would vanish. The 4 women on the target list might be dead within days. We need to move before Cross realizes something's wrong, Evan said, standing. That gives us 5 hours to take down an operation that's been running for 6 years. Sarah looked at him, at this stranger who had appeared from nowhere to pull her from a frozen grave. Why are you doing this? Really? Evan met her eyes. Because your daughter ran 2 miles through the snow to ask for help, and no one else was listening. Danny Cho hadn't slept in 23 hours. His eyes burned. His fingers ached from constant typing. 3 empty energy drink cans sat crushed beside his laptop. But he kept working, digging deeper into the digital trail that Dr. Raymond Cross had tried so hard to bury. Got him, Danny muttered, pulling up a new screen. Raymond Michael Cross, 52 years old, Chief of Transplant Surgery at Street Elizabeth Medical Center, board certified, 14 years at the hospital, published in 7 medical journals. Evan stood behind him, watching the data scroll. 2:17 a.m. Less than 4 hours until Cross expected to arrive at Derek's house. On paper, he's a saint, Danny continued. Founded a charity called Second Chance Lives. Raises money for organ donation awareness. Speaks at medical conferences. The hospital's website calls him a pioneer in transplant medicine. But I pulled his surgical records. Cross has performed 47 emergency transplant operations in the past 6 years. Every single one marked as urgent. Every single one with organ donors who came from outside the normal registry system. Marcus leaned in. Outside the registry? The National Organ Donor System tracks everything. Every organ, every donor, every recipient. It's supposed to be impossible to transplant anything without documentation. Danny's fingers flew across the keyboard. Cross found a way around it. His paperwork shows last-minute donors who conveniently can't be verified. Accident victims with no family. Anonymous donors who signed releases that later got lost. 11 of those donors were the women Derek and his friends killed, Evan said quietly. At minimum, the other 36 could be legitimate, or they could be connected to operations we don't know about yet. Evan processed this. 47 surgeries, potentially 38 more victims beyond the 11 Derek had confessed to, a network that might stretch far beyond New Jersey. What about Derek's sister? Danny pulled up another file. Brenda Lawson, 35. Registered nurse at Street Elizabeth. Same hospital as Cross. She works in the medical records department. That's how they find targets. Exactly. She has access to patient histories, blood types, health conditions, family situations. Danny highlighted several entries. I found her login credentials used to access files of women who later married Derek or one of the other collectors. She screens candidates, identifies who's healthy enough to harvest. Current location? Her apartment is 3 miles from the hospital. She has a shift starting at 7 a.m. Marcus made a note. Brenda Lawson would need to be handled. Now the hard part, Danny said. He pulled up a new screen. Bank records, phone logs, property documents. Cross has a private practice in Hoboken. Legitimate, licensed, above board, but that's not where the surgeries happen. You can't run an illegal organ harvesting operation in a regular clinic. So where? Danny zoomed in on a property record. 892 Industrial Boulevard, warehouse registered to a shell company called Atlantic Medical Supply LLC. The company's only asset is this building. It pays utility bills, property taxes, and nothing else. Warehouse doesn't need medical equipment, no, but this one uses electricity like it has a full surgical suite. I pulled the power consumption records. This building uses more kilowatts per month than a 30-bed clinic. Climate control, sterilization systems, surgical lighting. All consistent with an operating room. Evan studied the address. Industrial district. Low traffic. Few neighbors. Perfect place to cut people apart without anyone noticing. What about Cross's connections? Derek mentioned someone in government. Danny hesitated. This is where it gets dangerous. He pulled up phone records. Cross's personal cell. Hundreds of calls over the past year. 14 calls per month to a single number. Always short. Never more than 2 minutes. The number traces back to a general line at a congressional office. Which office? Senate. New Jersey delegation. Danny clicked to another screen. Photographs from charity events, political fundraisers, hospital dedications. Cross appears with the same senator in 3 separate photos, always at health-related events, always positioned like they know each other well. The image showed Cross shaking hands with a silver-haired man in an expensive suit, both smiling for cameras. Both looking exactly like what they appeared to be, a respected doctor and a respected politician. Senator Richard Hale, Danny read. 58 years old, 2 terms in the Senate, sits on the Health Committee, known for championing organ donation legislation. Marcus swore under his breath. The guy who writes organ transplant laws is running an organ trafficking ring? I can't prove that yet, Danny said carefully. All I have is phone calls and photographs. That's not evidence of involvement. Could be legitimate political relationship, but Evan was already thinking ahead. A senator on the health committee would have access to transplant policies, could influence investigations, could bury complaints, could protect an operation like this from any serious scrutiny. We can't touch him without proof, Evan said. Direct proof. Then we need Cross to talk. Evan checked his watch. 2:31 a.m. Cross is expecting to arrive at Derek's house at 6. That's 3.5 hours. We hit his warehouse before then. Capture him there. Secure any evidence he's stored. And if he won't give up the senator, then we find another way. Evan turned to Marcus. Victor stays with Sarah and Riley. I want 2 men on them at all times. Tony's team takes Brenda Lawson into custody at 4:30, before she leaves for work. The rest of us hit 892 Industrial. Marcus nodded. And if this senator really is involved, if we're going up against the federal government, Evan's expression didn't change. Then we'd better have evidence strong enough to burn him before he can burn us. 4:17 a.m. 3 vehicles stopped 200 yards from 892 Industrial Boulevard. 8 men emerged into frozen darkness. Evan studied the target through binoculars. 3-story warehouse. Brick exterior weathered by neglect. Windows boarded up. Graffiti on lower walls. From outside, it looked abandoned. But on the second floor, faint light bled through blackout curtains. Danny, we're in position. Security system is sophisticated. Commercial grade. Motion sensors. Silent alarm. Give me 8 minutes. 8 minutes felt like 8 hours. Done. 20-minute window. They moved. Marcus took point. Tony handled the rear door. 30 seconds inside. The first floor looked innocent. Reception area. Clipboards. A sign reading Atlantic Medical Supply. But behind the desk sat an unmarked ambulance. Paramedic uniforms on a rack. 6 stretchers against the wall. The vehicle meant to carry Sarah Morgan's body. Upstairs, Evan ordered. The second floor was different. White walls, fluorescent lighting, disinfectant smell. An operating room occupied the center. Full surgical suite. Anesthesia equipment. A table with restraints. Overhead lights designed to illuminate bodies being cut apart. 3 industrial freezers lined the far wall. Marcus opened one. Human organs inside. Kidneys. Livers. Each container labeled with dates and recipient codes. A filing cabinet held 47 patient files. Color-coded dots marked each folder. 26 red dots. 26 women who entered alive and left in pieces. Boss. One man gestured toward a back office. Someone's in there. Evan pushed the door open. Dr. Raymond Cross lay on a leather sofa. Eyes closed. Waiting for morning. Waiting to harvest Sarah Morgan. Evan's gun touched Cross's forehead. The doctor's eyes opened. No panic. Just cold calculation. You must be why Derek stopped answering, Cross said calmly. Get up slowly. Cross obeyed. Completely unhurried. You're making a terrible mistake. The man who protects this operation is untouchable. When he finds out, who is he? Cross smiled. If I tell you, you're dead. If I stay silent, I might live. A phone buzzed on the desk. One message from unknown number. Package status? Evan typed back. On schedule. 6 a.m. confirmed. Sent. Cross watched with grudging respect. Buying time. Smart. But it won't save you. Evan looked at Marcus. Lock him down. Photograph everything. We have until 6 a.m. before anyone realizes the schedule changed. Less than 2 hours to bring down an empire built on bodies. Cross sat handcuffed in the warehouse basement. Silent. Smiling that infuriating smile. He hadn't spoken another word since capture. Just watched with the patience of someone who believed rescue was coming. 5:12 a.m. Evan stood over Danny's shoulder, watching data scroll across multiple screens. Cross's phone had yielded more than expected. 3 numbers he contacts most frequently, Danny reported. First is Derek Lawson. Second is Brenda Lawson. No surprises there. The third? Danny's face tightened. That's where it gets complicated. Unknown number. Burner phone. But the metadata shows it consistently pings towers in the Newark PD district. Evan felt the temperature drop in the room. A cop. Has to be. The pattern fits. Calls happen after incidents that would normally trigger investigations. Car accidents. Missing persons. Unexplained deaths. Every time something in the network should have drawn attention, this number lights up. Then the cases go quiet. Marcus stepped forward. I know someone who might talk. Guy named Rodriguez. Works internal affairs. Hours me from back when. Go. Marcus left. Returned 37 minutes later with a name. Detective Frank Mercer. 48 years old. 23 years on the force. Homicide Division. Marcus dropped a file on the table. Rodriguez has suspected him for years but could never prove anything. Cases assigned to Mercer have a funny habit of closing fast. Real fast. Danny cross-referenced the information. Rebecca Lawson's death. Car off Miller Bridge. Mercer was lead investigator. Ruled accidental in 72 hours. 3 days to close a suspicious death investigation, Evan said flatly. It gets better. I pulled financial records. Danny turned his laptop around. Bank statements filled the screen. $15,000. Every month. For the past 4 years, wire transfers from an offshore account linked to a shell company that traces back to Cross's medical supply business. $720,000. That's how much it cost to buy a detective. Mercer doesn't just look away, Evan said slowly. He actively protects the operation, closes cases, buries evidence, makes sure no one asks questions. But he's not the boss, Danny added. He's too low on the food chain. Someone above him has to be directing this. Someone with enough power to keep Mercer in line. The senator. It always came back to the senator. Evan's phone buzzed. Victor's number. We have a problem. Victor's voice was tense. There's a car parked outside the clinic. Been there 20 minutes. Police cruiser. I ran the plates. Evan's blood went cold. Whose unit? Registered to Newark PD. Homicide Division. Detective Frank Mercer's squad. The room went silent. They had found Sarah. Maybe through hospital records Brenda had accessed. Maybe through traffic cameras. Maybe through the same resources that had kept this network hidden for 6 years. It didn't matter how. What mattered was that a corrupt cop was sitting 50 feet from the woman whose testimony could bring down everything. How many officers? 2 in the car. They haven't moved yet. Just watching. Waiting for orders. Waiting for someone to tell them whether to grab Sarah Morgan or simply eliminate the problem. Victor, listen carefully. Evan kept his voice controlled. Wake Sarah. Get Riley dressed. Use the back exit. There's a service corridor that leads to the laundromat's loading dock. I'm sending a car to pick you up. Where do we take them? Evan thought fast. The clinic was compromised. His main warehouse had Derek and Cross. Any location connected to his organization might already be flagged. The cabin, he decided, 40 miles outside the city. My family's property. Nothing on paper connects it to me. Nina's there. She'll take them in. We'll be ready in 5 minutes. You have 3. Move. Evan hung up, looked at Marcus. Those 2 cops outside the clinic. Follow them. Don't engage unless they move on Victor's car. I need to know who they report to and how they found us. Marcus nodded once and disappeared. Danny was already typing. I'm wiping the clinic's digital footprint. Security footage, appointment logs, everything. By the time Mercer's people get inside, it'll look like no one's been there for weeks. Evan checked his watch. 5:31 a.m. Less than 30 minutes until Cross was supposed to arrive at Derek's house. Less than 30 minutes until whoever was pulling the strings realized their entire operation had been blown. And now the enemy had eyes on Sarah and Riley. The countdown had just gotten shorter. 5:34 a.m. Victor moved fast. Sarah was awake but weak. Her legs trembled when she tried to stand. The hypothermia had drained something fundamental from her body, left her shaky and exhausted despite hours of warming. I can't, she started. You can. Victor wrapped an arm around her waist. We don't have a choice. Riley appeared at her mother's other side. 8 years old, feet still bandaged from frostbite, eyes fierce with determination. I'll help, Mommy. Together, they moved through the back corridor, past storage rooms, past the industrial washing machines that provided cover for this place, toward the loading dock where a black sedan waited. Behind them, through walls and distance, sat 2 police officers who had no idea their targets were slipping away. Decoy is ready, Victor murmured into his earpiece. 3 blocks north, one of Evan's men started a white van, pulled out of a parking spot, drove slowly past the clinic's front entrance. The police cruiser's engine roared to life. Victor watched through the loading dock window as the cops pulled out, following the decoy north, away from the real prize. Go, now. They loaded into the sedan, Sarah in the back, lying across the seat. Riley pressed against her side, Victor behind the wheel. The car slipped into the pre-dawn streets. 5:38 a.m. Marcus's voice crackled through the earpiece. Decoy just got stopped. 2 more units converging. They're searching the van. They'll know it's empty in 60 seconds. Mercer's on the radio. He's calling for a grid search. All units. They're going to lock down every exit from the neighborhood. Victor pushed the accelerator. Not too fast. Fast enough. He knew these streets. Every alley. Every shortcut. Every camera blind spot that Evan's operation had mapped over years of careful work. The sedan wound through back roads, past sleeping houses, past empty lots, away from the main arteries where roadblocks would appear. In the rearview mirror, Victor glimpsed flashing lights 3 blocks back, then 4, then gone as he turned into an industrial access road. Sarah's breathing was shallow. The stress was taking its toll on her damaged body. But Riley sat perfectly still. No tears, no panic, just small fingers wrapped around her mother's hand, holding tight. Riley. Sarah's voice came out thin. Are you scared? The girl looked up at her mother, considered the question with surprising seriousness. No, we're running from police. Bad people are chasing us. How are you not scared? Riley glanced at Victor in the front seat, at the way he drove with calm precision, at the voice in his earpiece giving updates, at the entire machinery of protection surrounding them. The men who saved you, Riley said simply. They're like superheroes. The ones in movies who look scary but help people. They won't let anything bad happen to us. Sarah stared at her daughter, at this child who had run through frozen darkness to find help, who had trusted a stranger with a gun and a dangerous face, who still believed in heroes despite everything the world had shown her. When did you get so brave? You taught me. Riley squeezed her mother's hand. You said brave means being scared and doing the right thing anyway. I was scared. I did the right thing. Now I'm not scared anymore because the right people found us. Victor allowed himself a small smile. 43 minutes later, the sedan pulled onto an unmarked dirt road. Trees pressed close on both sides. No streetlights, no signs. The kind of path that appeared on no GPS system led to no official destination. The cabin emerged from the darkness. Log construction. 2 stories. Warm light glowing through curtained windows. A woman stood on the porch, 29 years old, dark hair pulled back severely, the same cold eyes as her brother, but with something sharper underneath. Nina Castellano. She opened the car door before Victor finished parking. Inside. Quickly. I've got coffee and medical supplies ready. Sarah tried to stand, faltered. Nina caught her. Strong arms, steady grip. I'm Evan's sister. I'm also a lawyer. Which means I'm going to keep you alive, and then I'm going to make sure the people who did this to you never see sunlight again. She helped Sarah toward the cabin. Riley followed close behind. Victor stayed by the car, scanning the tree line. Listening, watching. No sirens, no helicopters, no signs of pursuit, for now. Inside, Nina settled Sarah onto a couch beside a fireplace, wrapped her in blankets, handed Riley a cup of hot chocolate. Then she pulled out a legal pad and pen. We have maybe 12 hours before this gets complicated. I need to know everything. Names, dates, every detail you remember. We're building a case that even a senator can't escape. Sarah looked at this fierce woman, at the determination in her eyes. You really think you can stop them? Nina's expression didn't waver. My brother already has. Now it's my turn to finish it. 6 a.m. The moment Cross was supposed to arrive at Derek's house. The moment he was supposed to begin harvesting Sarah Morgan's organs. Instead, Cross sat handcuffed in Evan's warehouse. Derek sat in a separate room, equally restrained, and the fake ambulance that should have been collecting a body sat photographed and catalogued as evidence. Somewhere, someone was waiting for a call that would never come. Danny watched his screens, monitoring the phone they had taken from Cross, watching for the response he knew would follow. 6:03 a.m. The message arrived. Status, 1 word. Same unknown number as before. Evan looked at the phone, considered responding, decided against it. Silence would tell them everything they needed to know. Cross was compromised. The operation was blown. Time to run. They'll react now, Evan said. Watch everything. Danny's fingers flew across key shoe boards. 6:09 a.m. Cross's bank accounts just got frozen. Someone's moving fast. Offshore transfers rerouting. Shell companies dissolving. 6:14 a.m. Mercer's radio just lit up. He's received orders to locate Derek Lawson. Quote, find him. Silence him. End quote. 6:21 a.m. Movement at 892 Industrial. Vehicle approaching. Black SUV. 4 occupants. Evan had anticipated this. He'd left 2 men at the warehouse after removing the evidence. Watching. Waiting. Tell them to hold position. Let the cleanup crew enter, then take them. The operation unfolded through Danny's screens. Thermal imaging showed 4 figures exiting the SUV, moving toward the warehouse. Entering through a side door, they expected to find an empty building, files to burn, equipment to destroy, evidence to eliminate. Instead, they walked into an ambush. 3 minutes of muffled sounds through the earpiece, then Marcus's voice. 4 in custody, professional muscle, no identification, but one of them is talking. Bring them in. 37 minutes later, Evan stood over a man with a broken nose and terror in his eyes. Who sent you? I don't know names. The man's voice cracked. We work through Atlantic City. Jobs come through a handler. We never meet the client. Then how do you know who you're working for? The man hesitated, looked at the faces surrounding him. At men who clearly operated outside any law he might appeal to. There's a password. For jobs from the top, So we know their priority. What password? The man swallowed hard. Hale sends regards. The room went silent. Evan looked at Danny. Danny was already searching, typing, pulling records. Senator Richard Hale. Danny's voice was flat. 58 years old. United States Senator from New Jersey. Currently serving his second term. Member of the Senate Health Committee. Subcommittee on Healthcare. Specifically overseeing. He paused. Scrolled. Read. Specifically overseeing organ transplant policy and regulation. The irony was so dark it almost seemed fictional. The man responsible for organ transplant oversight was running an organ trafficking network. The fox guarding the henhouse. The wolf wearing shepherd's clothes. Danny pulled up more data. News articles. Press releases. Campaign materials. Hale is known for his anti-trafficking legislation. Introduced 3 bills targeting human smuggling operations. Gave a speech last year about protecting vulnerable women from exploitation. Danny's voice dripped with disgust. He's been called a champion of victims' rights. Because he knew exactly where to find victims. Knew exactly how the system worked. Knew exactly how to manipulate policies to create loopholes his operation could exploit. How long has he been in the Senate? Evan asked. 12 years. But he was a prosecutor before that. District attorney in Essex County. Where Derek had operated. Where Rebecca had died. Where cases got closed and evidence disappeared. Hale hadn't just protected this network. He had likely built it. Marcus stepped closer. Boss, this is federal. A sitting United States Senator. We can't just, I know. Evan stared at the screen. At the smiling face of a man who shook hands with presidents, and posed with orphans, and gave speeches about justice, while 26 women lay dead because of him. We can't go public without evidence that directly connects Hale to the operation. Everything we have so far is circumstantial. Phone calls to his office. A password that mentions his name. That's not enough to bring down a senator. Then what do we do? Evan thought about Riley. About her frozen feet, leaving bloody prints on concrete. About her desperate voice asking a stranger to save her mother. About 26 women who had no one to run for help. We find the evidence, whatever it takes. Whoever we have to pressure. We build a case so airtight that not even a senator can escape it. He looked at Cross, sitting silent in the next room. And we start with the doctor who knows where the bodies are buried. 8 a.m., Nina Castellano spread documents across the cabin's dining table. Legal pads filled with notes, photographs, printed transcripts, USB drives containing videos and audio files. The evidence of an empire built on bodies. Here's our problem, Nina said, looking at Evan through a video call on her laptop. We have enough to destroy Derek Lawson, Raymond Cross, and Frank Mercer. But Senator Richard Hale? He's untouchable with what we have. Sarah sat nearby, wrapped in blankets, Riley asleep against her side. Both looked exhausted. Both refused to leave the room while their fate was being discussed. Walk me through it, Evan said. Nina organized the evidence into piles. Pile 1. Derek's confession video from Sarah's USB. Clear admission of killing Rebecca. Mentions Cross by name. Mentions the insurance scheme. This alone puts Derek away for life. Pile 2. The 47 patient files from the warehouse. 26 confirmed deaths. Medical records showing Cross performed the surgeries. This destroys Cross's license and puts him on death row. Pile 3. Bank transfers from Cross to Mercer. $15,000 monthly for 4 years. Combined with case files showing Mercer closed every investigation connected to the network, this ends his career and earns him 20 years minimum. She paused, looked directly at the camera. But Pile 4, Hale, all we have is phone calls to a general Senate office number, a password that mentions his name, photographs at charity events. That's not evidence. That's coincidence. Any defense attorney would tear it apart in minutes. Evan knew she was right. Circumstantial evidence might convince journalists, might spark investigations, but it wouldn't convict a sitting United States senator with powerful friends and unlimited resources. We need direct connection, Nina continued. Something that proves Hale knew about the operation, directed it, profited from it. Without that, he walks. And if he walks, he comes after everyone who threatened him, including Sarah, including Riley. Sarah's voice cut through the silence. Derek has a notebook. Everyone turned to look at her. A small leather book. He keeps it locked in his truck's glove compartment, never lets it out of his sight. Sarah's voice was steady now, focused. He told me once, when he was drunk, that if anything ever happened to him, that notebook was his insurance policy, his guarantee that he wouldn't go down alone. What's in it? I don't know. I never saw inside. But the way he talked about it. Sarah shook her head. He was afraid of someone. Someone powerful. That notebook was his protection. Nina leaned forward. If Derek documented his arrangement with Hale, dates, payments, instructions, that would be direct evidence. "Where's the truck now?" Evan asked. Danny's voice came through the speaker. He was monitoring from the warehouse, watching police scanners and traffic cameras. Derek's pickup is still parked at 1847 Oak Ridge Drive. The house is a crime scene now. Newark PD has it locked down. 2 units posted outside, yellow tape around the property. "Let me guess," Marcus said darkly. "Mercer's units, his people, his control. No one gets in or out without his knowledge." Silence filled the cabin. The notebook that could bring down a senator sat in a truck 50 feet from corrupt cops who would destroy it the moment they realized what it contained. "We need that book," Nina said quietly. "Without it, Hale escapes. With it, we end this." Evan studied the situation through Danny's surveillance feeds. 2 police cruisers, 4 officers, crime scene tape, neighbors watching from windows, broad daylight. "This is insane," Marcus said. "Walk into an active crime scene? Under the noses of Mercer's people? In the middle of the day? Do you have a better idea?" Marcus was silent. "That notebook is Derek's leverage against Hale," Evan continued, "which means Mercer will be looking for it too. If he finds it first, it disappears, along with our only chance to connect Hale to 26 murders." Nina's voice came through the speaker. "Evan, if you get caught, there's nothing I can do. Breaking into an active crime scene, stealing evidence, assaulting police officers, if it comes to that. You'd be giving Hale exactly what he needs to discredit everything we've gathered. Then I won't get caught." Evan looked at Marcus, at the resignation in his oldest friend's eyes. "We go in smart. No violence unless absolutely necessary. Danny creates a diversion. We pose as utility workers, just like we've done before. In and out in under 10 minutes. And if something goes wrong?" Evan thought about Riley, about her bloody footprints in the snow, about her voice asking a stranger to save her mother. Then something goes wrong. But that little girl ran 2 miles through freezing darkness because she believed someone would help. "I'm not going to let her down because the safe play is easier." Marcus sighed, the sound of a man who knew arguing was pointless. "When?" Evan checked his watch. 2 hours. Let them get comfortable. Let them get bored. Then we go in. 10:30 a.m. A white utility van turned onto Oak Ridge Drive. Newark electric and gas logos on both sides. Magnetic, easily removed. Completely authentic looking. Danny had worked miracles in 2 hours, hacked into the power company's work order system, created a service call for 1847 Oak Ridge. Electrical inspection required due to reported outage. Documentation perfect. Digital trail clean. Evan sat in the passenger seat, blue work uniform, hard hat, tool belt, clipboard with official-looking paperwork. Marcus drove, same uniform, same props. 2 utility workers responding to a routine call. Nothing to see here. 3 police cruisers sat outside Derek's house. Yellow crime scene tape stretched across the front yard. 4 officers stood in various positions, bored, cold, waiting for shifts to end. And inside the house, visible through the front window, Detective Frank Mercer himself. "He's here personally," Marcus muttered, "looking for the same thing we are. Then we'd better find it first." Marcus parked the van at the curb. They climbed out slowly, casually. 2 workers annoyed at being called out on a cold morning, nothing unusual about their presence. Evan approached the nearest officer. Young guy, maybe 25, still impressed by crime scene tape and detective badges. "Morning. Got a work order for this address. Electrical inspection." The officer frowned. "This is an active crime scene." "Yeah, I can see that." Evan kept his voice bored, slightly irritated. "But the call came in at 6 a.m. about a power fluctuation, grids showing irregularities. Could be faulty wiring. Could be something pulling too much juice." He glanced at the house. "You guys got anything running in the basement that might cause a spike?" The officer's face shifted. "Uncertainty now. There's a large freezer unit down there. Industrial grade? Restaurant equipment? I think so." Evan nodded knowingly. "That's probably it. Those things draw serious power when they malfunction. Mind if we take a look? 10 minutes? Tops? Just need to check the breaker panel and make sure nothing's going to catch fire." The officer hesitated, looked toward the house, looked back at the work order Evan held out. "I guess, let me check with the detective." He walked inside, returned a minute later. "Detective Mercer says go ahead. Just stay out of the way and don't touch anything related to the investigation." "Wouldn't dream of it." They entered the house. Mercer stood in the living room, going through drawers, pulling out papers, checking behind furniture. searching with the desperate energy of someone running out of time, looking for Derek's notebook. He barely glanced at Evan and Marcus as they walked past. "Breaker panels usually in the basement or garage," Evan said loudly. "Let me check the garage first." Mercer grunted acknowledgement. Went back to his search. The garage door was unlocked. Derek's black pickup truck sat inside, dusty, cold, exactly where he had left it before everything fell apart. Marcus moved immediately to the passenger side, opened the door, reached for the glove compartment. Locked. He pulled a small tool from his belt, the kind that looked like it belonged with electrical equipment, but served a very different purpose. 7 seconds. Click. The glove compartment opened. Inside. Registration papers, an old flashlight, a pack of cigarettes, and a small leather notebook held closed by a rubber band. Marcus grabbed it, slipped it into his tool bag, closed the compartment. "Got it," he whispered. They spent another 3 minutes pretending to inspect wiring, making notes on clipboards, playing the part. Then they walked back through the living room. Mercer was still searching, more frantic now, pulling cushions off the couch, checking inside DVD cases. A man who knew his career depended on finding something before anyone else did. He wouldn't find it. "All clear," Evan announced. "Breaker's fine. Probably just the freezer cycling. These old units do that sometimes." Mercer looked up. For the first time, actually looked at Evan's face. His eyes narrowed. "Have we met?" Evan kept his expression neutral. "Bored. A worker who just wanted to finish his shift." "Don't think so. But I've been working this neighborhood all week. Maybe you saw me at another house." Mercer stared, something flickering behind his eyes. Recognition trying to surface, but not quite connecting. "Yeah," he said slowly. "Maybe." Evan nodded politely, walked toward the door, Marcus beside him, neither moving too fast, neither showing any sign of urgency. The front door closed behind them. 20 feet to the van. 15. 10. "Hey," Mercer's voice. Behind them. Evan stopped, turned, kept his face calm. Mercer stood in the doorway, eyes still suspicious. "You got a card? In case we need to follow up on the electrical issue?" Evan reached into his pocket, pulled out a business card Danny had printed that morning, handed it over. "Newark Electric. Main numbers on the back." Mercer took the card, studied it, studied Evan's face one more time. "Thanks for coming out. Just doing my job." They climbed into the van. Marcus started the engine, pulled away from the curb at exactly the right speed. Not too fast, not too slow. In the side mirror, Evan watched Mercer standing in the driveway, still watching, still suspicious, but too late. The notebook was already gone. The notebook sat on the warehouse table, small, leather-bound, held together by a rubber band that had seen better days. Something a man might keep grocery lists in, something nobody would look at twice. Inside was evidence of 27 murders. Evan removed the rubber band, opened the cover. The first pages were coded, numbers and symbols arranged in patterns that looked complicated at first glance. But Derek Lawson wasn't a sophisticated man. His encryption was the work of someone who watched too many crime shows. Danny cracked it in 11 minutes. "Simple substitution cipher," Danny explained, typing the decoded contents into his laptop. Numbers for letters, symbols for common words. Probably thought he was being clever. The decoded pages told a horror story. 27 names, all women. Each entry included a date of completion, insurance payout amounts, and organ harvest values. Running totals showed profits exceeding $14 million over 6 years. 27, Marcus said quietly. "We only found 26 files at the warehouse. One is still alive." Danny pointed to the last entry. Sarah Morgan. Status marked as pending. She was supposed to be number 27, Riley's mother. Hours away from becoming another line in a dead man's ledger. Nina's voice came through the video call. "Keep going. What else is in there?" Evan turned pages, found what he was looking for. Names. Not victims this time. Perpetrators. Derek Lawson. Pennsylvania and New Jersey. William Patterson. Pennsylvania and Delaware. James Walker. Delaware and Maryland. Thomas Reed. Maryland and Virginia. 4 recruiters. 4 states. 27 women between them. But the next page changed everything. Founding agreement, Evan read aloud, dated 8 years ago. Outlines the structure of the operation, division of profits, responsibilities of each participant. 3 signatures at the bottom, Raymond Cross, the surgeon, Derek Lawson, the first recruiter, and a third name, written in confident cursive that had signed countless documents since. Richard Hale. Not Senator Hale, not yet. 8 years ago, Richard Hale had been a prosecutor. a rising political star with medical connections and ambitions that required capital. He had signed his name to a murder conspiracy before he ever held public office. That's it. Nina's voice trembled with something between rage and triumph. That's direct evidence. His signature on a founding document. Proof he didn't just know about the operation. He helped create it. Evan stared at the signature, at the neat handwriting of a man who had built a political career on the bodies of 27 women. This is enough? This is everything, combined with the patient files, the financial records, Derek's confession, Cross's statements. This is an airtight case. No jury in America would acquit him. Then we need to get it to someone who can act on it. The problem was trust. Local police were compromised. State authorities might be influenced. Even federal agencies had been known to bow to political pressure when senators were involved. I know someone, Evan said. Marcus looked at him. Who? FBI. Special Agent Marcus Chen. Chen? The guy who spent 3 years trying to build a case against you? The same. Evan almost smiled. He's honest. Incorruptible. Hates political corruption more than he hates organized crime. And he's always respected that I have principles, even if he doesn't agree with them. You think he'll work with you? I think he'll work against a senator who murdered 27 women, the enemy of his enemy. Evan pulled out a phone. A clean line, untraceable. Dialed a number he had memorized years ago for situations exactly like this. 3 rings. Chen. Agent Chen. It's Evan Castellano. Silence. Then a careful response. This is unexpected. I assume you're not calling to confess. I'm calling to give you the biggest case of your career. A sitting United States Senator. 27 counts of murder. Organ trafficking. Conspiracy. Corruption of law enforcement. Longer silence this time. I'm listening. Evan talked for 15 minutes. Laid out the evidence. The victims. The network. The signatures in Derek's notebook. Everything they had gathered since a barefoot girl had stumbled out of the darkness asking for help. When he finished, Chen was quiet for a long moment. If this is real, it's real. Every document, every recording, every photograph. I'll send copies within the hour. Verify them yourself. Why bring this to me? Why not handle it your way? Evan thought about Riley, about her frozen feet and desperate eyes, about her faith that the scary men in the dark were actually heroes. Because sometimes justice needs to be public. Sometimes monsters need to face courtrooms, not back alleys. And because a little girl deserves to know the system can work when the right people are involved. Chen exhaled slowly. Send me everything. If it's as solid as you say, I'll have federal warrants within 24 hours. Hale, Cross, Mercer, all of them. One condition. Name it. Sarah Morgan and her daughter. They're witnesses. They need protection. Real protection. Not the kind that can be bought or intimidated. Done. Federal witness protection. They'll be safe. Evan ended the call, looked at the notebook one last time. 27 women who had trusted the wrong men, who had died alone and afraid, whose bodies had been sold piece by piece to the highest bidders. Today, they would finally get justice. 1:47 p.m. Senator Richard Hale stood at his office window, looking out at Washington without seeing it. His phone pressed against his ear. Mercer's voice on the other end, panicked and breathless. Cross is gone. Derek is gone. The warehouse was cleaned out before our people arrived, and there were 2 utility workers at Derek's house this morning. One of them looked familiar, but I can't place him. They were in the garage, near Derek's truck. Hale's grip tightened on the phone. The glove compartment? Empty. Whatever was in there, they took it. The notebook. Derek's insurance policy. The one piece of evidence that could connect Hale directly to the network. 30 years of careful work. 30 years of building power. Accumulating wealth. Eliminating threats. And now some unknown player had appeared from nowhere and dismantled everything in a single night. Who are they? I don't know. Not cops. Not feds. Someone with resources and training. Maybe organized crime. Maybe private security. Whoever they are, they knew exactly what they were looking for. Hale walked to his desk, sat down, forced himself to think clearly. The ship was sinking. He could feel it. Evidence was gone. Witnesses were talking. And somewhere out there, someone held the documentation that could destroy him. Time to cut losses. The woman, Hale said. Sarah Morgan. She's the only witness who can connect faces to names. Find her. Eliminate her. We don't know where she is. She wasn't at the clinic when we checked. Someone moved her. Then find her. Hale's voice went cold. Use everything. NSA contacts, traffic cameras, phone tracking, credit card traces. I don't care how. Find her before she talks to anyone official. And if she's with the people who took Derek, then eliminate them too. All of them. No witnesses. No survivors. Clean this up or you'll be the next person who needs cleaning. The line went dead. 2 p.m. Hale's resources moved fast. Contacts in intelligence agencies. Favors owed by surveillance contractors. The kind of reach that came with 12 years in the Senate and a seat on committees that oversaw national security. Traffic cameras tracked a black sedan, leaving Newark in the early morning hours. Cell tower pings followed its path west. Satellite imagery showed a vehicle matching its description parked outside a cabin 40 miles from the city. A cabin registered to a shell company that traced back to real estate holdings connected to the Castellano family. By 2:15 p.m., Hale had an address. By 2:30 p.m., 6 contractors were en route. Not police, not federal agents, private military, the kind of men who handled problems for powerful people and never appeared in official records. The cabin sat in a clearing surrounded by forest. 2 stories, log construction, smoke rising from the chimney. Inside, Nina Castellano, Sarah Morgan, Riley Morgan, 2 bodyguards that Evan had assigned before leaving. Outside, approaching death. 2:41 p.m. The first shot shattered the living room window. Nina reacted instantly. Years of growing up in a dangerous family had taught her to recognize violence before it announced itself. Down! Everyone down! She tackled Sarah and Riley to the floor as glass exploded above them. The 2 bodyguards returned fire immediately. One positioned at the kitchen window. One crouched behind an overturned table. More shots. Rapid. Professional. Coming from multiple angles. 6 shooters! One guard shouted. Maybe more. They're surrounding us. Riley screamed. Sarah pulled her daughter close, shielding the girl with her own body. Nina crawled across the floor toward a bookshelf, reached behind it, pressed a hidden latch. A section of wall swung open. The panic room. Her brother had insisted on it when they'd built this cabin years ago. Reinforced steel behind wooden panels. Air supply. Communications. Designed to withstand exactly this situation. Inside! Now! She grabbed Riley, pulled her toward the opening. Sarah followed. Behind them, one of the guards grunted. Hit, blood spreading across his shoulder. But he kept firing. More glass breaking. Bullets punching through walls. The sound of boots on the porch. They were breaching. Nina shoved Sarah and Riley through the panic room door. Followed them inside. Pulled the steel barrier closed. Locks engaged automatically. 3-inch steel. Deadbolts on all sides. Outside. Gunfire intensified. Then stopped abruptly. Silence. Nina pressed her ear to the door. Heard voices. Movement. Men searching the cabin. Then pounding on the steel. They're in here! Get the equipment. We're cutting through. Nina pulled out her phone. Dialed Evan. They found us. Her voice came out steady despite her racing heart. 6 shooters. Professional. They're trying to breach the safe room. Evan's response was immediate. How long can the door hold? 30 minutes. Maybe 45 if they don't have heavy cutting tools. I'm 40 miles out. 15 minutes. Evan, hurry. They're not playing around. These are killers. 15 minutes. Nina, keep them safe. The line went dead. Nina looked at Sarah and Riley huddled in the corner of the small room. Mother holding daughter. Daughter clutching mother. Riley's eyes found Nina's. Is Uncle Evan coming? Nina forced a smile she didn't feel. He's coming. He always comes. Outside, the sound of metal grinding against metal began. A saw, industrial grade. They were cutting through the door. The saw screamed against steel. Inside the panic room, sparks flew through the seam where blade met door. Orange light flickering in the darkness. The sound of metal dying slowly. Nina checked her watch. 7 minutes since she'd called Evan. 8 more until he arrived. The door was designed to hold for 30 minutes against standard tools. But these weren't standard tools. Industrial cutting equipment, the kind used to breach bank vaults. Maybe 20 minutes, maybe less. Sarah sat in the corner, arms wrapped around Riley, both pressed against the reinforced wall, as far from the sparking door as possible. Riley wasn't crying. Nina noticed that. 8 years old, assassins cutting through the door, death minutes away. And the girl wasn't crying. Riley. Nina kept her voice calm. Are you okay? Riley looked up. Those huge brown eyes that had convinced a Mafia boss to save her mother. Uncle Evan is coming, she said simply. He promised he'd keep us safe. He always keeps his promises. Nina stared at this child, at her absolute certainty, her unshakable faith in a man she'd known for less than 24 hours. How do you know? Because that's what heroes do. Riley squeezed her mother's hand. They come when you need them. The saw cut deeper, metal groaning, the seam widening. 12 minutes. 11. Then the saw stopped. Voices outside, confused, alarmed. What the hell, gunfire? Not the controlled bursts from before. Chaotic, desperate, then darkness. Every light in the cabin died. Every electrical system went silent. Danny, working from 40 miles away, had killed the power grid for a 3-mile radius. The contractors had been working in light. Now they fought in darkness, and in darkness, Evan Castellano was king. 4 vehicles had approached from different directions. No headlights, no engine noise until the last possible moment. 12 men who knew these woods, knew this cabin, knew exactly how to move through shadows. Evan led the assault personally. No shouting, no warnings, just precise, coordinated violence. The first contractor died before he knew anyone had arrived. Not dead, Evan had given orders. Neutralize, don't eliminate. Corpses created complications. Prisoners created leverage. A shot to the knee. The man collapsed. The second contractor spun toward the sound. Marcus appeared behind him. A chokehold. Pressure on the carotid. The man went limp in 8 seconds. Inside the cabin, 2 more contractors scrambled for position, firing blindly into darkness, hitting nothing. Evan moved through the house like smoke, every corner mapped in his memory, every floorboard that creaked, every shadow that offered cover. 3 minutes. 4 contractors down, wounded but alive, restrained with zip ties. The remaining 2 backed into the kitchen, weapons raised, eyes useless in the pitch black. Drop them. Evan's voice came from everywhere and nowhere. You're surrounded. Your employer can't help you. The only question is whether you walk out of here or get carried. One contractor threw his weapon down immediately. The other hesitated. Marcus's hand closed around his throat from behind. The gun clattered to the floor. 5 minutes. 6 contractors. 0 casualties on Evan's side. Evan approached the panic room door. The saw had cut a 6-inch gash in the steel before power died. Not enough to breach. Not even close. He knocked. 3 short. 2 long. 1 short. The code. Locks disengaged. The door swung open. Riley exploded out of the darkness. She crashed into Evan's legs with the force of a small, desperate missile. Arms wrapping around him. Face pressing into his coat. I knew you'd come. Her voice muffled against the fabric. I told them you'd come. Evan stood frozen. He had killed men, ordered deaths, built an empire on fear and violence, 20 years of hardening himself against every soft emotion that might make him weak. And now an 8-year-old girl clung to him like he was the only safe thing in a world full of monsters. Something cracked inside his chest, something he hadn't felt since his mother died, since he'd hidden in a closet and done nothing. This time he hadn't hidden. This time he'd come. Slowly, carefully, he placed one hand on Riley's head. I told you, he said quietly. I keep my promises. Sarah emerged from the panic room, pale, shaking, but alive. Thank you. Her voice broke on the words. Again, you keep saving us. I don't know how to, don't thank me yet. Evan's expression hardened. The men who sent these contractors, they're still out there. This isn't over until they're in cells. He looked at Marcus. Get everyone to the secondary location. Triple the guard. No one in or out without my personal authorization. Where are you going? Evan thought about Senator Richard Hale. About 27 women. About a little girl running through the snow, because no one else would listen. To finish this, 6 p.m. FBI Special Agent Marcus Chen stood in the Situation Room of the Newark field office, surrounded by stacks of evidence that would end careers, destroy reputations, and put powerful men behind bars for the rest of their lives. The notebook alone was damning, but combined with the patient files, the financial records, Derek's video confession, Cross's recorded statements, and testimony from 6 captured contractors who were desperate to make deals, the case was airtight. We're ready, Chen said into his phone. Execute all warrants simultaneously, across 4 states. Federal agents moved. Senator Richard Hale was in his Washington office when the door burst open. Cameras from 3 news networks captured every moment. Someone had tipped them off. Someone who wanted the world to see. Richard Hale, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, racketeering, human trafficking, and 27 counts of murder in the 1st degree. Hale's face went white, then red with rage. This is absurd. I'm a United States Senator. This is a political hit job, a conspiracy by my enemies to Sir. Your signature appears on founding documents of an organ trafficking network. Agent Chen's voice was ice. Your handwriting? Your name. 27 women are dead because of an operation you helped create. Hale kept screaming as they cuffed him, kept screaming as they led him past the cameras, kept screaming about conspiracies and frame jobs and political persecution. No one believed him. Simultaneously, at Street Elizabeth Medical Center, Dr. Raymond Cross was escorted from his office in handcuffs. The man who had performed 47 illegal organ harvests walked past colleagues who stared in horror, past nurses who had admired him, past patients who had trusted him with their lives. His expression never changed, the same cold calculation he'd shown in the warehouse. Even now, he was thinking of angles, deals, ways to minimize his exposure. There would be no deals. Detective Frank Mercer was arrested at his desk. 23 years on the force, hundreds of cases closed, dozens of crimes covered up. He went quietly, knowing resistance was pointless. Brenda Lawson screamed when they came for her, fought, bit one agent's hand, cursed everyone within earshot, but she went into the car like all the others. And Derek Lawson, already in custody, already delivered to federal authorities by anonymous means, simply sat in his cell and stared at the wall. The man who had married women to murder them, who had looked into their eyes and pretended to love them while planning their deaths. He didn't speak at all. The press conference began at 9 p.m. FBI director personally attended, standing behind a podium crowded with microphones, facing a room full of journalists. Today, federal authorities dismantled the largest organ trafficking network in American history. Over 6 years, this criminal enterprise murdered 27 women across 4 states. Victims were targeted, married, and killed for insurance money and organ harvesting. The estimated profits exceed $14 million. Photographs appeared on screens behind him. Victims, not the clinical headshots from the files, real pictures, smiling women, mothers, daughters, sisters. Among those arrested, United States Senator Richard Hale, the architect and protector of this operation, Dr. Raymond Cross, who performed illegal organ extractions, Detective Frank Mercer, who suppressed investigations, and 4 individuals who served as recruiters, targeting and marrying victims. Questions erupted, shouting, chaos. The director raised his hand. Justice will be served. These individuals will face the full weight of federal prosecution. No position, no title, no amount of power can protect someone from accountability for these crimes. The trials moved quickly, evidence too overwhelming to contest. Senator Richard Hale, life imprisonment without possibility of parole. 27 counts of murder. Stripped of office, legacy destroyed. Dr. Raymond Cross, life imprisonment, medical license revoked, name added to the registry of history's most notorious killers. Detective Frank Mercer, 45 years. His badge melted down, his pension seized. Derek Lawson, life imprisonment, 11 direct murders. No possibility of parole, no possibility of redemption. Brenda Lawson, 30 years. Accessory to murder. Conspiracy. She would be 65 before seeing daylight again. The other recruiters received similar sentences. The buyers who had purchased organs faced their own charges. The network collapsed completely. Every connection severed. Every participant identified. Sarah Morgan and Riley Morgan entered federal witness protection. New names, new city, new life. A chance to heal away from the nightmare they had survived. And Evan Castellano? His name appeared nowhere. Not in arrest reports. Not in evidence logs, not in any testimony. The anonymous tipster who had provided the crucial notebook was never identified. The source of the patient files remained unknown. The person who had captured Derek, Cross, and 6 contractors simply didn't exist in any official record. Agent Chen knew. He had known from the moment Evan called, had known when the evidence arrived, had known when pieces fell into place too perfectly to be coincidence. But some things didn't belong in reports. Some justice required shadows. Chen stood at his office window that night, looking out at a city that would never know how close it had come to letting monsters walk free. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Thank you," Evan's voice said, "for listening." Chen was quiet for a moment. 27 women, he finally replied. Someone had to. The line went dead. In the darkness of Newark, Evan Castellano disappeared back into the shadows where he belonged. A ghost. A rumor. A devil who had answered an angel's prayer. Justice didn't always wear a badge. Sometimes it wore an expensive suit and cold eyes and moved through the world like smoke. 1 year later, San Diego, California, a small apartment with ocean views, sunlight streaming through windows that stayed open because no one was afraid anymore. Sarah Mitchell, her new name, her new life, stood in the kitchen making pancakes, the kind of morning she had dreamed about during 19 months of terror. She was different now. Stronger. 3 days a week. She volunteered at a shelter for domestic violence survivors, held hands, told women that escape was possible, that help existed. She was living proof. "Mommy, I'm ready." Riley bounded into the kitchen, 9 years old, 4th grade, a smile that hadn't existed a year ago. Her grades were excellent. Her friends knew nothing about frozen basements or barefoot runs through winter darkness. "Did you finish your essay?" Sarah asked. Mrs. Patterson said it was the best one in class. The assignment. Write about your hero. Riley had written about a man with no name, a stranger who came from darkness when no one else would listen, who kept promises and proved that scary didn't mean bad. The doorbell rang. Sarah tensed, checked the peephole. No one there, but on the doorstep sat a small package. No return address. Inside, her silver bracelet, S&R forever, cleaned, polished, repaired. Beneath it, a Spider-Man figurine, and a note, for Riley, heroes protect. E. Riley held the figurine like treasure. "Mommy," he remembered. Some people never forget. 3,000 miles away. Newark. Evan Castellano sat in his darkened office. On the desk, a child's drawing sent through secret channels. A small girl holding hands with a tall man. Above them, "Thank you for saving Mommy." Marcus stepped inside. "Boss, situation with the DeLuca family." Evan slid the drawing into his drawer, locked it. "Let's go." He walked into shadows, still dangerous, still cold, but carrying something different inside. Somewhere right now, another child might be running through darkness, barefoot, terrified. If that child is lucky, if that child is brave, maybe they will find the right person, because sometimes angels don't wear white. Sometimes they wear leather and drive expensive cars. And sometimes the devil is the only one willing to answer your prayers. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe, like and share so others can hear these stories daily. How did this story make you feel? Have you met an unlikely hero? Share your experiences below. We want to hear from your heart. Thank you for watching. We wish you health, happiness, and peace every day. Goodbye and see you in the next video.